So, what a week in the crypto market. Will Bitcoin continue to break down right now? Is this a sign of just another larger pullback? I'm going to go ahead and let you know my thoughts in the video. It's just going to take a few minutes, so make sure to watch. I'll let you know my thoughts as far as potential buying opportunities, where Bitcoin can go, how low. And so we'll go ahead and get to the charts. Now, as you know, unless you live somewhere far away on an island without any type of technology, Jerome Powell from the Fed just hinted to potential rate cuts in September. Now, with that said, the market pumped. Now, Bitcoin just a few days ago went from 111 up to 117 and now has fully retraced the pump, which it's not really looking good because that is a real fragile market. That's a sign of weakness for Bitcoin. Now, if we go ahead and zoom out, as you know, Bitcoin had been ranging between this range of 111 up to 123 for the past couple of weeks. And we did sweep the highs up here, okay? So typically when that tends to happen, it does pull people off sides. People will long, people will buy late, and of course, sellers come in, push down the market. Now, we did think that that was just really it. We thought that when Jerome Powell said that, hey, there's going to be some easing, there's going to be some potential rate cuts going on, you know, the way the market reacted very strongly was a good thing. But just over the weekend, there was a massive pullback. And so right now, Bitcoin, if we're zooming out, where it's actually bouncing at is from the previous high back in June, and that's where it's bouncing at right now. So with all these lines, why I'm putting this here is because you want to watch for a potential bounce, knowing that the market just doesn't go straight up or down. And I do believe that we get that here at 109, a potential bounce to 111, 112, and then from there, I do believe, unless we've seen some signs of strength, Bitcoin will actually continue to go lower. Now, on my last couple of videos, I was super excited because I did believe that we had real opportunity for Bitcoin to get to new highs. But I was very clear. I always want to give highs and low targets as far as scenarios go. I never just want to say Bitcoin's only bullish or Bitcoin's only bearish. And I'll do the same here. And the same target is going to be where I want Bitcoin to break for me to really get bullish. And that's going to be back up to this level of 116 to 117,000 dollars for Bitcoin. Now, I was very clear on my previous video, even though I was quite bullish, you had to watch it. If you go back and watch that, I did state if Bitcoin can break above this level and hold this area, I do believe it's going to go to the upside. But if it does not, we're going to retest the bottom of the range and potentially break it. And that is exactly what has happened over the last couple of days. So that was a key level there for 116, 117. That is a key level that was once support, right? Support, 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 and has now acted as resistance twice in a row. And that will remain the level currently that you want to watch at these prices for Bitcoin to break in order to be bullish. And I honestly am not for sure if we're going to get that quite yet, because we have seen a real lack or weakness with the spot bid, meaning that most of the market has been driven by leverage. Now, you can even see this if I go to the liquidation map here. You're going to notice just here in the past 24 hours, we had over $800 million of Bitcoin liquidated from leverage trading, so from long positions. So we had 800 the day before. We had around 450. Now, you do have to remember that typically on the weekends, there's not as much volume in the crypto market. So for us to have 450 the day before, 800 today, it just really shows that this market up and down, the volatility is really driven by leverage. Now, it's not until that spot volume comes back up and becomes a premium and spot leads that you're going to really see more strength in the market. So right now, currently, what you need to know is that there's a weakness in spot buying, and there is a lot of leverage trading, which is never going to lead to strength and a new high when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto. So that's something that you have to be aware of. Now, we also want to understand that if we go, let me go to this chart, lots of charts today right here. You're also going to see this is the Bitcoin spot ETF inflows, outflows, and of course, you're not seeing any inflows here over the past week. And again, really showing a little bit of weakness there when it comes to Bitcoin in the spot bid with these ETFs, also with outflows. So the narrative right now is that Bitcoin is looking weak and we want some strength to come back in. Now, when does strength come back in the market? When do buyers come back in? A market is technically an auction, guys. That's all it is, okay? You buy, you sell. You buy, you sell. You buy when you believe that the price is good. You sell when you believe that the price is good to get a profit from. Now, some people will buy high, they'll sell low, they'll get scared, emotions get in the way. But bottom line, if you're a successful investor and trader, you buy at a lower price that you feel is a good price to buy into, and you sell at a higher price. Now, this is the same thing with Bitcoin. This is not rocket science. And what I believe we have to see is potentially Bitcoin to actually go a bit lower in price for those buyers to come back in, to want to hold Bitcoin overall until it leads to a new high. Now, where is that potential opportunity at? Well, the potential opportunity for Bitcoin really lies, you can actually see in the chart some sticky key areas. But again, 103, I'm going to go to the weekly chart here. And so if I zoom out here, where you're going to see a moving average as far as that goes is this weekly 50 moving average that has acted as a great opportunity. Let me go ahead and circle that. Here, down here, multiple times in this multi-year uptrend. And I believe by any means, probably the lowest that Bitcoin can go, first of all, people ask me how low we can go, is going to be down here around 95,000. Now, certainly, I think a huge psychological level for Bitcoin is 100K, meaning that anything below 100K, since it's been over 100K for so long, is going to look like, quote, cheap Bitcoin. Okay, so I think you're going to see some big buyers come in, even breaking that $100,000 barrier. 95 to 98K, okay, I think could be potentially, of course, this lower wick right here of the previous range. We could also see if Bitcoin does continue down. By the way, this is my lowest price I see Bitcoin going. This is not necessarily where it's going to go, but to sweep this level of 98 to 95 down here to this moving average, I believe is a really good place where you'll see a lot of buyers and a lot of volume step in. Now, that is one place I think that you'll see buyers. I think also as well, too, if we continue to break down here, if we continue to break below 109 to 108, we're likely to see lower here to this bottom range around 103, okay? And that's going to be on the daily 200 daily moving average. I think that will be a key place. Now, you have to remember, though, that the daily 200 moving average did break even this past year. Okay, we broke below it. We stayed below it. And so that's why I want to go back to the weekly. The higher time frame it is, usually the better it is as far as a response goes. But I do foresee potential opportunity here at not 103, 102 area. I think right above 100K as the next level if we break 109 to 108K. And then from there, I would look down to 98 to 95. So those are just some buying opportunities. Again, why I say that is if we can't break above 116 to 117 and we can't hold this current range, 109, 108, we're going to break down further. And I believe that is going to be as low as 103 at first and then down to 98 to 95. Now, if you have not been in the crypto market very long, that actually is not that low as far as percentage wise. Now, if I were to go ahead and show you, currently Bitcoin is down around 12%. Now, a 12% pullback is very normal when it comes to crypto and Bitcoin. And if we were to go down to about 103, that would be more of a 15 to 17 pullback. And if we were going to can't talk, excuse me. If we were to go down to 95 to 98K, that's going to be more like a 21 to 23% pullback overall. Now, we have seen historically Bitcoin pull back quite a bit when it comes to these bullish market uptrends overall. Why is this still a bullish market? Why isn't it not a bear market yet? Well, because again, based on these moving averages and based on the horizontals, okay, there hasn't been structure break yet, meaning that we have not had lower highs and lower lows on the weekly chart. We have not had that in a very long time. So we continue this uptrend back from 2022, okay, multi-year uptrend. Now, once Bitcoin starts to actually break the weekly level, so this weekly candle, if this weekly candle were to actually come down to 98K and actually close there and continue to not be able to get back up further, that would definitely show a first sign of weakness on a higher time frame chart. Now, usually if you're basing things on a higher time frame chart, you're a little late regardless, okay? But we did see that this SFP here, swing failure pattern, last time we had this up here, we had it back in December, January, and that led to a drop from 109, 32% drop actually, down to 74, okay? So that was that 30% drop that we typically will see even in a bullish market in an uptrend overall. So for this to go down, even for Bitcoin to break down, down to 20 to 23%, that's not going to really be a big deal if it makes it down to this weekly 50 moving average or breaks right down below that, okay? 25% break, it is what it is. I'm just telling you potential opportunities, max potential opportunities, because you have to know this. Now, again, we're going to take it level by level and day by day, but you just have to understand Bitcoin has been looking weak with the overall spot bid, and we want to see buyers come in. Buyers will come in when the price meets a level they want to buy at, and typically technical analysis, levels, moving averages, all these things are great indicators to use to show you when potential people will buy in. 108K, 103, 98, 95. Okay, so we'll take it level by level from there, but you have to know that September seasonality, if I were to go ahead and go to this chart, here on CoinGlass, is that September, August tend to be red anyways. This was not expected one bit. We did expect there to be a pullback eventually. I was one who thought that what we would see is we'd see potential pump into FOMC in mid-September, then a pullback from there. But what looks like what's happening right now is that we're having that pullback early. We're about a week early from September. We're pulling back, and that can actually continue to pull back for the next 4 to 6 weeks. It's not really a big deal. Now, what could actually happen is we could pull back now, potential somewhat of a rally mid to late September if FOMC goes well, depending on what Powell says, and that's a month away. As we get closer, 3 to 4 weeks away, we'll talk more about that and potential opportunities. Right now, we don't want to worry about it, but you just have to know maybe we pull back earlier as we go, and then later, like in September, October, we start to move up from there, okay? So what we do know, as we'll get into rate cuts in future videos, is that whenever the Fed has its first rate cut, it tends to be very volatile, okay? So up and down swings, very volatile. You have to know that. So we'll break that down, but September is something to behold, always red. October, green, and that really sets us up for a good October anyway. So again, I don't want you to be discouraged. This is very normal, and I know a lot of people were all in up here. One thing to know, besides never putting in more than you can afford to lose, is that it's very likely that this is a short-term incident where, yes, we'll get potentially deeper prices, especially on altcoins, but great buying opportunities if you do have stables and cash in order to see a potential uptrend in Q4. Now, Ethereum overall is bouncing right now here on the daily, 10-day moving average, and on the weekly. That is an ugly weekly candle. But what we saw ETH do is that ETH actually pushed up. It could not break above $5,000, but it did hit a brand new all-time high. And typically when that happens, we've seen that numerous times before. I'm circling here in May of 2021, December of 21. We saw that after a brand new all-time high came into play, a nasty dive even in May, right? We dropped from 4,300 down to 1,700. I think that was like a 60% decrease in price, which was just nasty. Now, I don't think we're going to see that now with Ethereum, and a big reason that is because if you can actually look at this chart right here, if you zoom in, it actually talks about the spot Ethereum ETF volumes, and it just continues to increase overall. And in fact, there was a Bitcoin well, and I'm going to show you this article, is that a Bitcoin well actually caused Bitcoin to crash the past few days because they sold off Bitcoin and they ended up taking those funds and buying around, I think, $2 billion worth of Ethereum. So they went from Bitcoin to Ethereum because, again, I think this major player thinks that with the ETF hype and all the treasuries with Ethereum, that Ethereum is going to continue to push up in price. I've even heard of Ethereum predictions up to $15,000 to $20,000. Now, I personally don't think it'll hit that high. I love $8,000 to $10,000. I'd love to see that. Of course, that would be about a 3x from here. But $2 billion worth of Bitcoin sold, Ethereum bought, and Ethereum ETFs continue to increase in volume over the trend since April, May, June, July, now in August. Now, you can expect some potential outflows into Ethereum ETFs because just naturally the market is down, right? Because the market is down, people are going to naturally have those outflows. They're going to be buying and just, especially if it's not at a price where people want it at. If Bitcoin and crypto continue to pull back in general, well, Ethereum as well too. Going back to that chart, Ethereum could certainly come back down here sub $4,000. And that would not be out of the question. Again, I did tell you last time it hit an all-time high in 2021. It did dip around 60%, maybe even more. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Ethereum did come down and sweep these levels of 4,000, come below it. And of course, we have seen, at least on the higher time frames, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. As you can go ahead and see here, Ethereum is well above all the moving averages on the weekly, meaning that we need a bit of a mean reversion. It means that ETH has pumped a lot, okay? And because of that, it's going to pull back probably significantly. And so I do foresee ETH go below $4,000, potentially where I would see it bounce at maybe the lowest, I think, would be, especially if Bitcoin continues to pull back to 103.98. If that does happen, I can definitely see Ethereum pull back down to around this $3,300 level, okay? So these are just buying opportunities, not saying it's necessarily going to happen, but based on the bid of these coins right now and crypto and market and the sentiment of not knowing what's going to happen with the rate cuts in September seasonality, we're just going to get a pullback very likely after being very frothy since June, July. So we've had multiple weeks, multiple months of an uptrend. There needs to be a multi-week pullback, and I think that's what we're starting here. Not need to worry, but just understand you need to have good risk management, because if you're buying here and just thinking it's going to pump, I have news for you. There's a lot of weakness in the market right now. Now, based on the ETH BTC chart, we have seen ETH outperform Bitcoin a lot over the past few weeks. And I do believe a lot of times you'll see these uptrends with ETH, these big pumps in ETH, and you'll always end up seeing a pullback. So don't be surprised if Bitcoin outperforms Ethereum here in the next few weeks. And typically whenever there's a major market pullback in crypto, money goes to two places. It goes to dollars or stable coins, and it goes into Bitcoin, because Bitcoin tends to be a little less volatile than all the smaller altcoins in crypto. Ethereum's not a small crypto coin, but it is still more volatile, more high beta than Bitcoin, more volatile, meaning that it's going to pull back harder than Bitcoin. So do expect that this ETH BTC chart does pull back, okay? Meaning that if you're buying anything besides dollars or getting into dollars, then Bitcoin's probably going to be the thing unless you're in some type of outlier, low cap altcoin that is performing very well. And we know always meme coins, AI, there's always something that's pumping, right? Even though the market's pulling back. Now, to go on to that market weakness, one thing that I want to show you is that people will say, well, stocks are actually still up, because if you look at the stock pump from when Jerome Powell talked about the rate cuts, it pumped from 63 up to 64, and it's pulled back slightly, okay? It's pulled back. It hasn't fully retraced the pump like Bitcoin has. And so that is just showing you that based on that, this is the Bitcoin correlation chart. The green and blue are the NASDAQ and S&P. The purple is gold. And based on this, a correlation between the SPX and NASDAQ would be a 1 correlation. And currently right now, the SPX is at a 0.18. What does this mean? It means the stock market and Bitcoin are not correlated right now, is what I'm trying to tell you. Why that's important is because typically, at least recently, you saw up here in the months of even June, July, you saw that when the stock market pumped, Bitcoin went up with it. Well, that's not going to necessarily happen right now because there's major sign of weaknesses in Bitcoin, okay, compared to the stock market. And so because of that, if you do see a green rally day in the stock market the rest of this week, it does not necessarily mean that Bitcoin is going to continue to pump into that, okay? But Bitcoin is also 24/7. The stock market closes. And we could also see Bitcoin push up with the stock market during the day, and then after hours, it dumps. So I'm just saying overall, just because the stock market pumps does not mean Bitcoin is going to pump with it. And that's an important thing for you to know, because so often we want to correlate those two together. But currently right now, this is the Bitcoin versus the stock index. And this is just showing you here over the past 3 weeks, Bitcoin has been very weak against the stock market. It's been bleeding out, okay? So right now, the stock market is definitely stronger than Bitcoin. The dollar is stronger than Bitcoin. And in general, crypto is just pulling back, okay? So understanding it does not matter whether the stock market pumps or dumps right now, but Bitcoin, crypto in general, is showing a sign of weakness, and there is no correlation, with that said, with the stock market. Now, is this the end of the cycle? Is this the top of Bitcoin, as people ask? And I've told you multiple times, I don't believe that, because we still haven't had the frothy euphoria sentiment that I typically will tend to see when it comes to these all-time highs. Now, I've been through multiple all-time highs through multiple markets. I've been here for a long time. That's why I make these videos, to educate you from my experience, and I will let you know when I think there's an all-time high. Excuse me. I'm not going to tell you to go all in when I think it's the top, or by any means, I should never tell you that, but I'm not going to be really pushing even myself to buy when I think a top is near. But good buying opportunities ahead for sure. I don't think the top is in. And one model that I continue to use now is the Bitcoin quantile model. And this, again, shows you, based on these lines right here, whether or not Bitcoin is potentially at an all-time high. And it really has to do with volatility, overshooting. You know, as far as Bitcoin price goes, right, it tends to be asymmetric. It tends to be very volatile, and a lot of indicators don't pick up on that. And a lot of indicators did not actually pick up the top of the double top of last cycle. So I've went through this model a few times now, but bottom line, what this model is showing is that we're still actually in an uptrend with Bitcoin. And until it breaks below this green line and stays below this green line, which is around $90,000. Now, unless we're breaking that here in the next month or two and staying below it, it's very likely that we're not at a market top either. And that would probably be the beginning of, quote, a bear market or down market. But I do believe that Bitcoin will continue up. I believe that there's an opportunity to break $200,000 based on this model. And no, I don't think that there's been enough signs of data historically or anything to show that has been a Bitcoin high, but there is a need for a pullback, which will lead to more buying, more bigger funds, more people in, more people sharing about it, more media talking about it. And that's just going to lead to new higher highs here, in my opinion, in Q4 of 2025 going into Q1 of 2026. So no, I don't believe we are at all-time highs. So with that said, you know my thoughts on it. And basically, to summarize, Bitcoin has a weak buying bid right now. There's not a lot of people buying it. Ethereum has been outperforming Bitcoin. I expect that with that market pullback, Ethereum is going to lose a little steam against Bitcoin. But come Q4, Ethereum and Solana, some of these altcoins will likely continue to outperform Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not correlated to the stock market. Stop looking at that right now. Just understand that regardless of what the stock market does, Bitcoin is going to continue to do its thing, but it has not been looking good against stocks at the moment. So that's where we're currently at. Looking back again, look for those 108 level to bounce up potentially to 112. Reject off there. If we can't get above 116, 117, not going to be bullish. Okay, so potential bottoming out anywhere between 95 to 98K in my personal opinion. That's about the lowest I think we go. But as you know, I'm going to be on here every week, almost every day, to update you, have live streams as well. So make sure that you check out live streams as well. I'll have those on here this week. I'll probably have one maybe on Wednesday and Friday, those couple of days. I think I'll have a live stream. So be sure to check those out. I do like to give away some Bitcoin, like $100 here every once in a while. That's a lot of fun for viewers. So we'll go ahead and do that as well. If you've not yet subscribed to the channel, make sure that you do so. I don't have the subscribe button here because this is actually my access to the channel, but you can actually hit subscribe here underneath my picture here under Rager Crypto, and would love to have you to have more notifications up. And of course, if you want to be a part of those $100 Bitcoin giveaways. So with that said, that's it for me today. Oh, and the only thing I want to let you know is there's more and more talk if you do use MEXC, MEXC. If you do use this, there have been quite a few people, including the white whale, this Pablo Ruiz guy, who have talked about MEXC freezing their funds if they have a lot of funds there. Now, I don't know the truth of all this. I just do know that a lot of people who have held at least 6 to 7 figures on this exchange right here, MEXC, have actually had funds frozen. And again, I don't want to really talk bad about them, but I do know that I want everybody protected. So if you do have funds on here, make sure that you don't put a 6 to 7 figures on this exchange. Have only the amount that you're okay with losing. That's how I see it when it comes to this exchange. I know like coins that I like, such as Bongo Cat, the meme coin is on here. They've been very cool to support that. Again, I'm just saying that even with Bongo on there, I would never, ever put a ton of money on any exchange, maybe outside the major exchanges of, Coinbase, Kraken, Binance, etc. So, and everybody has their own thoughts about that. But just to warn you, there are definitely people who have said their funds have been frozen for no reason on this specific exchange. That can happen to any exchange. So that's the importance of self-custody. But bottom line, just be careful, guys. Never put a lot of funds on any exchange. And I just wanted to remind you about that. Seeing these stories is really sad to see people lose money, to have it frozen because, they put too much on there. So it's always high risk. So, all right, guys. So with that said, you guys continue to trade safe. Have a great rest of your day, by the way, and I will see you on the next one.